With that, it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for today, Margaret Busse. Margaret was appointed by Governor Spencer Cox in January of 2021 to serve as a member of the cabinet as executive director for Utah's Department of Commerce, Utah's chief business regulatory agency. She has an MBA from Harvard and a degree in public policy and economics from Brigham Young University. She's really leading AI efforts and AI regulatory efforts, not just for the state of Utah, but nationally, right? She was led the creation of one of the first Office of AI Policy in the state, which has become, from what I hear, a model for the nation, right? She was named the most influential woman by Utah Business Magazine and received the Cyber Pioneer Award from the Utah Bar Association, was the Utah Women of Tech Award finalist, and received the Rev Rhodes Championing Women in Business Award. She's a Utah native, and she's an incredible supporter of this initiative. She's part of our external advisory board, and she's been a tremendous force and a guiding light for what we've been doing here. So with that, let me call on Margaret.
Awesome. And can I use one of these mics here? Better roving. Is this on? Yeah, it is on. Awesome. I am so excited to be here, and I want to just first thank Manish. It's been incredible to see the Responsible AI initiative be stood up so quickly and so effectively, and there's already amazing work that's coming out of this initiative, and we all get to hear more about it later today. And really appreciate the support of Dr. Montoya as well to be here and support and represent the support that University of Utah, our flagship university, has for this important new sort of paradigm, we could say, in our lifetimes of the emergence of artificial intelligence. I'm here also representing Governor Cox. Governor Cox is passionate about making Utah the leader in artificial intelligence in all different fronts. And we're going to actually talk a little bit about that today. So let's go ahead and get started. Utah has really already demonstrated tremendous leadership, significant leadership in the realm of artificial intelligence on all different fronts. So we're going to talk about that and how that positions us to be able to define what the future could look like for artificial intelligence. Yes, we're a little old Utah. We always like to say that we punch above our weight. And I think here in this particular emerging technology of artificial intelligence, we are doing so tremendously. I think it becomes actually an understatement to say we're just punching above our weight. So we're going to learn a little bit about why. So we're going to talk about what we've been doing on the policy front. That's where I have the most expertise. That's where I've been involved. But also, what have we been doing to prepare our workforce? What are our academic institutions doing, including the amazing work of RAI? What is our industry doing? There's some really phenomenal things going on in our industry as well. How is our government, how is our state government actually deploying AI to be more effective, right? That's another element. And then, of course, the infrastructure. Many of you have heard about Governor Cox's Operation Gigawatt that he's standing up to double energy production so we can actually power AI. We'll hear a little bit more about that. And then some other tech policy actions that reflect the values of Utah. And then finally, what does this mean for the future and how we can leverage it? All right, so let's talk first about the policy. So some of you might have seen this if you've been in the realm of policy. We've shown this chart a lot, this Venn diagram a lot. I know my colleague Jeff Moss is here. somewhere. Barclay Burns is here, and some others that were very, very intimately involved as we tried to shape this approach to Utah's policy. It was actually Jeff Moss that convened a group. He was in the state legislature at the time. He's now gets to be my colleague over at the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity, but he convened a group of us to figure out what should be our approach. There was, as you know, right after the first sort of public ChatGPT came out in November of 2022, just incredible amounts of excitement. And of course, at the same time, incredible amounts of anxiety. What does this mean for our future? What are the possibilities? What are the risks? What are the possible harms? Like I've never seen in my lifetime. And so I think a lot of folks around the country, around the world, were sort of like, I don't know what to do, and sort of sat on their hands because it was just a really sort of dimly lit place to be. What do we do here? And so what we did is we said, well, let's actually just at least define broadly, what should we be trying to accomplish? And these things sort of look fairly simple, but let me just talk to you about them. First, we said in our policy approach, we want to be able to foster innovation. Utah is a tech forward place. We know that. We have a fantastic and robust tech industry. We want to support that. We've always been a place for startups. We've always been a place for entrepreneurism. How can we foster innovation? Second, maybe obviously also, is how do we protect the public? Again, that anxiety that was happening with that first introduction of ChatGPT was probably well-founded, because what does this mean? What does this mean for my privacy? What does this mean for my job? What does this mean for potential harm that could come to me? And this is all sort of on the back of a lot of analysis publicly around some of the harms of social media that have come through. But I think that heightened that sense of anxiety. But importantly, beyond just maybe the obvious of wanting to foster innovation and protect the public, we wanted to have a proactive place within government that could actively observe and learn, because this is what government is often not good at, particularly with technology. Technology is flying ahead at a breakneck pace, and I don't have a degree in computer science. I don't understand the ins and outs of exactly how neural networks work, right? And this is what happened, frankly, with social media, that our government didn't fully understand, our political leaders didn't fully understand the technology and the business models powered by the technology, and some of the harms that were coming. And so we wanted to have a place where we could be actively observing and learning, engaging with the community, engaging with stakeholders, engaging with industry to figure out what we should be doing and have somebody expert at doing that. So what we did is Jeff Moss, when he was in the House as a representative, and Kirk Collimore passed a bill in 2024. We came out early. I think we were really the first state to do anything around AI. And what we did was we created this Office of AI Policy. And there are sort of two functions to this office that I'm going to explain. The first function is what we call our Learning Lab. And what this is designed to do is to look at issues that may be sort of emerging, where there could be harms, where we might need regulation, because these certain types of harms have never been contemplated in the sort of age of generative AI. Certain possibilities were never there before. But in addition, because of this kind of technology, some of our regulations might be out of date and actually stifling innovation that we may need to clear away. So this Learning Lab is designed to define what we call our learning agendas, and say where do we need to do some research, do some stakeholder outreach, bring in different ideas, do some analysis, and then make really informed recommendations to the legislature of policy solutions. So that's the first function. The second function is what we call regulatory mitigation, which sounds extremely boring, just that phrase. We need to come up with a different phrase that sounds has a little more pizzazz. But really what it is this is where we get to directly encourage innovation. This is where AI-powered companies that are using AI in a unique way and are bumping up against regulations, again, that maybe never contemplated business models like they have, to be able to come to this office and say, we need you to help us. And this office that can then go to the relevant regulators, most of whom sit within our department, but some in other places in the state, and say, we think you should exempt this company temporarily from this regulation so we can experiment, we can watch, we can observe, they can experiment with the business model. And we even have the ability to do things like places where we would never exempt a company, something like, a consumer protection law that's designed to protect consumers. We might say, we're not going to exempt you from it. But if something goes awry, because we know there's a lot of sort of unintended consequences right now with the way a lot of chatbots work, hallucinations and those kinds of things. If you're coming to us first, we can agree to give you a curing period, a time to fix it, or we'll cap your penalties, that sort of thing. So we created this very flexible model for companies to be able to come to us. So that's basically the idea. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how that's been implemented. So first, in our learning lab, the first thing we decided to sort of tackle, if you will, we got the Office of AI Policy stood up very quickly, about a year ago, just over a year ago. And we quickly decided that our first learning agenda we wanted to look at was the use of generative AI in providing mental health care, right? So these sort of mental therapy chat bots, because we saw that there would be tremendous potential for these kinds of things, but also massive risk. So now you as a potential patient is now essentially putting in the most personal and sensitive part of your lives into a chatbot. And we know typically the default business model is collect your information, share it, sell it, serve you up targeted ads. That seemed really bad for this kind of a product, right? And so we looked at that. And actually in the law that was passed based on the recommendations, again, Representative Moss and Senator Colomore passed, so you can't sell the data and you can't serve targeted ads. So you got to have a different business model there. But then we thought, there actually is a regulatory barrier there, because right now, if you want to practice mental health in the state of Utah, you have to have a license. That license actually comes from one of our divisions in the Department of Commerce, the Division of Professional Licensing. So what happens when a chatbot's doing that? So what we said is we want to provide space for innovation. So we said in the law, if you are doing these 10 things that we think are best practices to make your product as safe as possible, so it's not hallucinating in really damaging ways, not recommending suicide, those kinds of things, then we will give you in what in law is called a safe harbor. We'll say we will not go after you for unlicensed practice. So you can proceed. There's a pathway to innovation. So that's just kind of an example of the way that we're trying to think about regulation, try to provide pathways for innovation where there might be a regulatory barrier, where we're also still protecting the public. Some examples of our regulatory mitigation. So this is really exciting. The first one we did, it's been very public. It's called Eliza Chat. They actually they work in the realm of sort of mental health, providing mental health in a chatbot form, really targeted at students. And we've worked with them very closely. And in fact, the things that we learned in working with them helped to inform our research for the law that was eventually passed. So we provided them some regulatory mitigation. We had a dentistry company come to us and say, we think using our AI tool, you can have a lower level, lower trained, lower cost practitioner provide a service that right now in law can't be provided by that lower level practitioner. Has to be a dentist, can't be a dental hygienist. But our technology is so good, a hygienist should be able to do it. And so working with them to give them an exemption. We did some things in the public schools as well. We've had dozens of companies come to us that we're working through, and it's been really amazing to see the types of innovation that is going on in our state and how we can help them. I'm going to come back to this later because now there's new federal legislation that I think will amp this up even more. But I also wanted to just mention that we talked a little bit about having more tech experts within government. So we have Dr. Zach Boyd. He's over there. You'll meet him. Stand up. There's Zach Boyd. We hired him. There he is again, for those that missed him. We hired him not from the U, but from my alma mater, BYU. He's an applied mathematics professor, so he actually deeply understands how the neural networks and so forth work. And it's been phenomenal. When I was thinking about hiring someone, I was thinking, oh, maybe a policy person that has a little bit of tech background. It was actually my husband, who is a technologist, said, you need to hire someone that actually knows exactly how this stuff works. And it's been incredibly beneficial to our state, frankly, to have an asset like Dr. Boyd. So really, really happy about that. All right, so that's policy. I'm going to come back to some other tech policy in a little bit, but that's our AI policy. And that's where we have been. I think it's a relatively simple idea, but we took action early, and it was an innovative idea that was actionable. And as Manish was saying earlier, we have received national and even international recognition for our approach, for just pushing something forward and starting instead of sort of sitting on our hands. Oh, and I think I didn't say back here, I didn't mention this, our current learning agenda. So we did the mental health thing and passed that into law. Our current, what we're working on right now, and you should expect to see bills in the next legislative session starting in January, are around companion AIs. Those have been getting a lot of attention, and deep fakes. So that's what we're working on right now. And then we've got some possible, excuse me, future learning agendas looking at healthcare and AI, consumer data privacy. We have a law in Utah, but do we need to refresh that given where we are with AI and given that the federal government has not passed anything in privacy, unfortunately. AI in education, agentic AI, these are all things that we may be looking at next year. Okay, so let's go back over here. So higher ed. Now we're going into the realm where I don't have as much expertise, but I want to give you a sampling of all the things that are going on in our state. So higher ed. So the University of Utah right here, RAI, helped to really facilitate this amazing agreement with NVIDIA, as you know, which is the company that builds the chips that powers AI, to basically have them help us with resources that can provide AI training, help us develop curriculum, internships, really so that we can start down this pathway of developing an AI savvy workforce. So that's been incredible. They've also worked to put together a portrait of an AI ready company and employee, just so we can kind of understand what that looks like. What are we even trying to go for here now with our graduates coming out of our colleges and our high schools? What does that look like? Talent Ready Utah, which is a program of the Utah System of Higher Education. I don't know if some of you guys know Talent Ready Utah. I'm on the board of that. They've been doing tremendous work. They work directly with employers to understand the needs of the workforce. It's actually an incredible program. I love it. Under the leadership of Vic Hockett. And they have been actively going out, understanding the needs, asking the legislature for money, and getting it to go to our universities to be able to start up these programs. Really incredible. They've actually gotten around $10 million already, and they're asking for another 4. And these are all kind of like pilot programs. So different universities can kind of see what works, and the workforce, as we start to understand more deeply what the workforce needs. K-12, again, this is not my realm, but there have been incredible efforts at our Utah system of, or Utah Board of Education, our K-12 schools. A guy named Matt Winters, some of you might know him. He's been really leading out under the direction of the superintendent to create guidelines for responsible AI and AI use in schools. He's also been leading out on specific programs put into the career and technical education portion of our K-12 schools, helping to train teachers and all sorts of things. But most importantly, I think, is just figuring out the right guidelines and guardrails as we start to use AI in our schools. Okay, so I put BYU first because I'm an alum, but I have University of Utah second. Sorry. But BYU, University of Utah, we have incredible work going on in our universities. BYU, actually, as I said, Dr. Zach Boyd comes from there, works as a professor in the applied mathematics program, and is spitting out graduates that have really amazing training that will make a huge impact on the AI space. University of Utah, we've already heard a little bit about it. We're going to hear a ton more about it, but I love this. I love that President Randall said, we're going to prioritize and focus, and we're going to spend $100 million on this because it's so important. What a vision that is. And Manish is realizing it, and it's really been incredible. But even, Utah State, they've been leading out. They have now a master's of anticipatory intelligence. They've always had a strong sort of research and tech side. They're using that now. They're leveraging that now to build out programs that can churn out graduates that can contribute to our economy. And Utah Valley University, I think we have Barclay here somewhere. There he is, there, Barclay. And he's been, I think, incredibly generous as he went as an AI expert to actually build up a whole program at Utah Valley University around AI. So those kinds of students can have access to the cutting edge education in this kind of technology. Incredible. So again, we're leading out all over the place. It's so exciting. Okay, just a few seconds, I should say, on the industry that's happening. How many of you are actually from industry, work for a company that's sort of AI powered? Amazing work, amazing work. I just talked to Jacob about what Talbot West is doing. But you can see some of the companies here. A few of them are not domiciled here. Of course, Texas Instruments, Adobe, but they have huge presence here, and they will be a massive part of the AI ecosystem. And so it's just exciting to see. We're all over the place. We've got fintech, we've got health services, mental health, we've got video imaging, we've got education, we've got Pattern, which is an amazing company that looks at it does competitive research, I should say, using AI. Dentacore, it's really amazing. There's so many. This is such an incredible time when everyone's trying to think about how can AI be deployed in this realm, in this space, to make things more efficient. Really amazing. So exciting. State government. Maybe it doesn't seem as exciting to you all, but it's exciting to me because I work in state government, and our Division of Technology Services for the state has really led out in how to quickly deploy AI in the tools that we as government employees use and that our customers, which are all of you, get to use. We've been recognized again nationally for how quickly we've been able to do that in a safe way. One of the benefits specifically to me and to our agency is that we've been able to have access to Gemini and Notebook LM, which has just been a huge help in our work. It just speeds up things, at just a record pace. It's really incredible. And we've actually stood up something within the Department of Commerce called the Commerce Innovation Lab, encouraging all of our employees, our frontline employees, now that they have access to these tools, to figure out ways to make their work more efficient. And then they get to sort of submit it to this Commerce Innovation Lab, and then we can choose which ones we want to adapt department-wide, which has been really exciting. And then finally, you talked a little bit about this before, Operation Gigawatt. This is something, a signature initiative of Governor Cox. He feels very strongly that we have to be leading out in generating more power. And so he has a goal to double the amount of energy production for the state of Utah in 10 years. And of course, a big part of this will be nuclear, but it's an all of the above. We are desperate for more power, not just to power AI, but to power our growth. And so this is really exciting and visionary. So you can see how there's just all these pieces that we've been leading out on across the different elements of how to support the AI ecosystem in this really important moment of time. One of the other things that we've actually let out on is sort of responsible tech policy, even just outside of AI. So in 2023, Utah became the first state to regulate social media for minors. Then we came back in 2024 and sort of redid the law. That's why that says 2024. But similar stuff in the law. We are the enforcers on that law. Unfortunately, we can't enforce because we're being sued by the tech companies for that law, but it's all about protecting minors, including requiring age verification and for minors using the product that requires them to provide a different experience that's safer and less addictive. We have also, our department on behalf of the state of Utah has sued Meta, and we have sued Snap, and we have sued TikTok twice. And for some of their harms. And I could go into to all the things that we see, but we want to make sure that our technology is safe, that it's productive, that it's helpful for people and not exploitative and not exposing our kids to harm. So we also have that ethos, right? We also have that ethos in our state. We've also been able to, we just passed this law, groundbreaking law, once again, the Utah Digital Choice Act, which really is targeting data governance and data ownership from social media companies and us, between social media companies and us, and requiring portability of all of our data that they collect and interoperability so that we can easily switch between different social media platforms and our followers can easily come with us, right? Right now, it's very hard to do that. You build up your followers on one platform, and then you might get kicked off that platform, or you might start to hate that platform because of the algorithms they use, but you can't go anywhere. You're stuck. Well, this law changes that. Now, the reason you haven't seen it yet is that there's delayed implementation. It'll go into effect next year. So another groundbreaking law, other states with this law and with our social media laws, our other social media laws, and with our AI policy, all of the states are watching us, are copying us, which we want, we hope for. We also have the App Store Accountability Act, which basically requires the app stores to do age verification to make it more safe. So we've just done a tremendous amount, again, reflecting our values here in Utah, that we want to be responsible users of technology. We want our kids to be responsible users of technology. Okay, so that's a lot of stuff that we've been doing, a lot of stuff that we've done, incredible amount of work on all fronts. How do we then lead out in the future? We have this amazing opportunity to lead out in the future of this watershed technology in this moment. So what does it look like? Well, we're all still talking about this. Governor Cox is prioritizing this. But I can tell you one of the things we'll be doing is making sure that we have a connected AI ecosystem. We're already pretty connected, but I think there's ways that we can be even more connected. We can be even more deliberate about how we can put together our leading academic researchers, for instance, and connect them to entrepreneurs. We actually saw a really cool model of this in Canada, in Montreal, when I was up there in April, and I think we can do it even better, though. And we want to make sure that we're connecting our industry with our academic institutions so we know really in real time what our workforce needs are, right? And we're doing that already, and we can amp it up even more. We want to make sure that we're connecting policymakers, regulators with our industry so we can understand where we need to make adjustments, like we've already talked about. So all of these things, it's part of Utah's culture. It's how we get things done. Utah is innovative and it's collaborative. That's just what Utah is. And that's why we get good stuff done all the time. And Jeff Moss, again, who's here, he's leading an organization in addition to the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity around, it's called Nucleus. That's all about trying to connect all of us in more meaningful and structured ways. And you'll see more about the Convergence Hall that he's leading the building of down at the Point that will literally be the physical embodiment of all of this. So this is so exciting. So connected, right? That's how we punch way above our weight is because we're coordinated, we're collaborative, we're connected. Pro-human. We just talked about some of the things that that we've done in Utah to lead out on really responsible tech policy, right? We want to be pro-human when we talk about AI and the potential. We want to make sure that the products and services that we're putting out are non-exploitative, that they're pro-free will, pro our agency, that they're pro-human interaction, that they're pro-empowerment, we're pro-learning, they can heal us, that they can help us to think, not take that cognition away from us, right? That's what it means to be pro-human. We want to challenge the status quo of how these business models have sort of evolved. Because remember, it's not the technology that was bad in social media, it was specific business models that were chosen to be exploitative. That does not have to be the case. We can make that choice. We can make that choice. We want to be building trust. We want to be building trust so that people can engage with products and services, our products and services that we're spitting out in our tremendous companies, that they can trust. That's what it means to be pro-human. And so when we think about this, and we're still kind of thinking about this, by the way, this is just like previewing some of the early thoughts, right? What might it look like in all of these sectors, all of these pillars that we've talked about? What it might it look like? Well, regulatory policy. We want it to be trust building. We want it to be informed by you all, by stakeholders, by industry, by experts. We want it to be balanced, just like we've talked about a little bit. So it helps to promote innovation while still protecting the public. We want our workforce development to be empowering of people, not disempowering. We want it to be equalizing. We want it to be resilience focused, right? We want people to feel like that are maybe nervous about getting automated out of their job. They have a shot, that they have a chance, right? We want our academic research and development doing exactly what the University of Utah is doing right now. Human problem focused, relevant problem focused, right? We want our industries, just like we talked about, to be value-based, to be accountable. We want it to be innovative. We want it to be connected. We want our government to be setting the example. We want it to be trustworthy. We want it to be competent so that when you engage with our government, you feel like it's competent and that it's incompetence inducing. And our infrastructure, we want it to be there so that it can handle the population growth. We also want to make sure we still, pay reasonable rates. So all of these things, we want to go in intentionally with this view that as we go in all these different directions, we want it to be pro-human, we want it to be connected. And so that's really kind of where we're all thinking about right now, and where we have this incredible opportunity to leverage how we have come out fast, come out innovatively, and come out competently, and come out nation leading. That's what's happened in Utah. That literally is what has happened in Utah. When we went to Canada, we visited a place called Mila, and there are a world-renowned AI research lab. And they met us, they knew we were from Utah, and they said, oh my gosh, we keep hearing about what Utah is doing. It was kind of incredible. Like a few of us kind of felt like we were celebrities. We had no idea, and it was really amazing. And people are watching Utah, and that's why we have this opportunity at this moment to lead. So we're excited to continue these conversations. I can't wait to hear about all the amazing work that's being done on the environment, on healthcare, on education that responsible AI has been leading out on. This is exactly what we need in Utah. It embodies the greatness of Utah. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Mark.
Happy to do questions.
Yeah. So thank you, Margaret, for your vision and for your leadership in making Utah a leader for the nation. Let's open it up for questions. We have a few minutes for questions for Margaret. There are mics on both sides, so please. You might use the mic up here. And there's one on that side as well.
Francis?
I've been roommates with two of Margaret's sisters, so this
It's
is
not why she's here, though.
Hey, I'm wondering, with Operation Gigawatt, we're talking about massive energy production. We also live in an extremely resource constricted state, particularly when it comes to water. And we have the benefit of public lands that attract recreation, but also are often on the table for energy related development. I'm wondering how your office, the governor's office, is working on balancing those two really important parts of Utah's identity and certainly things that impact our quality of life as well.
Yeah, great question. And I think it's been a question for many as the governor rolled out Operation Gigawatt. And I want to be clear, I don't want to be the spokesperson for Operation Gigawatt because it's not entirely in my wheelhouse, although we do regulate public utilities. So we've been part of those conversations. And what I can say is that I think there's definitely this very, very keen awareness of all of those things that you just talked about, Francis, and wanting to do it in such a way that we're still preserving our way of life, right? If we get to a place where we have a lot of energy and we have a crappy lifestyle, well, that's not where we want to be. And so I think it's being done very, very intentionally. There's a lot of data center technology that has come along that doesn't have to use as much water. I actually sat through a presentation in Silicon Valley around a technology that allows data centers to actually pump out heat that can be turned into energy, which is like super cool. So I think technology itself will continue to help us with this. And so to help us overcome some of the possible trade-offs. But I also know that Utah, in a coordinated agency wide effort that we are a part of, is looking at all of these trade-offs and figuring out the optimal way to get to this point. So thank you for the question.
Other questions, Margaret? Please, there's a mic behind you.
So I'm excited to see academia and the government, the public sector involved in this so proactively. I see on the other side of the coin, the private sector, it's like a gold rush. And there's just so much going on with the centralized players that we hear a lot about, and then all of the startups, ecosystems that are trying to get a piece of AI. You can't really have a company or get funding without AI in your name or in your business plan. So what in your mind, what is your idea beyond policy or in addition to policy to incentivize private sector to take this responsibility alongside the government and the academics who are presenting research?
Yeah, great question. And I think this is where really coming down to those two principles I talked about, which is connected and pro-human, is where it's really important. You know, we can't, we can do things that regulate where we see active harms, and we are doing that, right? But ultimately, it comes down to the choices of the companies and what we as a society tolerate. I think that's what it comes down to, right? And so we as people in Utah, we have the moral leadership, we have the innovative spirit, we have the drive to do good. So I feel very much like this is the place that we can show, sorry, I need to get rid of my clicker. That this is the place that we can lead out on. We can show how the future should be and hopefully will be by developing a culture through the connectedness, through this idea of wanting to push out the ideas around pro-human AI. I am very hopeful that we can do that. Again, ultimately, these come down to choices that AI companies are making about how they're going to make their business model work. And there's tremendous opportunity, by the way. I was talking to Jacob earlier. There's so many amazing things that we can do with just the efficiencies that come from AI. Prior to this job, I worked a lot in social impact. And one of the things that was most promising, if you will, is doing something called business at the base of the pyramid. So I'm talking about people that are like living in Africa at the very bottom of the sort of pyramid of income. And what AI could do, because often what happens is those people can't afford products and services that they need. Okay. And that's why companies don't serve them, because they can't afford it. So nonprofits can go in and they can go and try to help, but it's never totally sustainable until you have a business model that can support it. Well, with AI, you can do things much more cheaply, or if you can have analysis that's done that gives you far greater and more nuanced insight on, and for instance, like maybe I can make money off of funding that small business down in Luanda, Angola, or something like that, right? That will help humanity. That to me is pro-human AI, where there's a business model opportunity, right? So I just think there are so many opportunities to do that, that they do not have to be exploitative business models. Those are choices that we make and that we decide to tolerate or not tolerate.
Thank you. Please.
With respect to Operation Gigawatt, maybe I'm a little cynical, but it sounds like the idea is we're going to build a ton using public money of infrastructure to generate a lot of electricity so that private industry can come use those public resources, that public infrastructure, use a bunch of water to, make profit. From your perspective, what is the public benefit of private massive scale data centers existing in Utah, especially considering that like an AI scale data center is maybe 50 full-time employees. These are highly autonomous systems that generate a lot of waste, use a lot of energy, use a lot of water, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so let me take a broader answer and then I'm going to go specific. So I think that the vision of Governor Cox is that we want to be on the forefront of energy development so we can do it right.
What does
So
doing
we can do it right, which means that we are not doing what you just suggested. And frankly, we're the regulators over at public utilities. So we're watching very closely about how this gets implemented so that ratepayers aren't stuck with the bill. And we have the Department of Environmental Quality that's watching very closely and very involved in this. So we're not, wrecking our airshed and the water issues we brought up. Those are areas I don't have expertise in, but I know that's something that is absolutely part of the formula. It's not going to be a situation. It's not going to be a situation where we in Utah are exploited, right? At the expense, or that companies are getting record profits for these data centers at the expense of us. That's not going to be the case. So that's the type of model that we are building out.
No other questions? Please, please.
As you were talking about regulations, one of the things I was thinking forward about is accountability. I think specifically when you have medical professionals, therapists that are becoming bots. And we see this with a lot of corporations that they'll step back, nobody's accountable when something's harmed. Are you thinking forward about bots and AI systems that could possibly cause harm? And then what is that responsibility? Is it on fixing this bot? Does it go to the company? Is somebody ultimately ended up held accountable?
Yeah, these are all the sorts of things we're grappling right now within our Office of AI Policy. I mentioned what the legislation that passed, run by, again, then Representative Moss and Senator Colomore around mental health chatbots. These are the exact harms we're trying to get at. I personally think that the thing that we need to do in our country writ large is pass comprehensive data privacy and ownership laws, because I think that's where I think the biggest exploitation and harm can come from, is sort of companies having unfettered access to our data that we own. I think that's actually my personal opinion. That is what we need to do. But we're trying to do that at least now in these areas that we see active harms. That's why we're working on companion AI legislation for this next session for those exact reasons. Those are where we see potential for harm. And I think companion AIs could be amazing if they're designed appropriately, right? Right now we see that they're not, whether, and I think, you know, some companies have been explicit in how they're doing their guardrails. And others maybe need to be more careful. And there's, I think, just a lot more to be learned there. But that's exactly why we're looking at that particular issue. And again, deep fakes, where we see a lot of deep fakes are out there. Nope, they're not harmful. Nobody cares. People know it's fake and it's not a problem, right? But where it does matter and where it could be fooling people, for instance, in the political sphere, we need to have a way that we can understand if something's generated by AI or not. And that's the kind of thing that we're working on in our Office of AI Policy, which I think is really, really exciting. Yeah.
Thank you. There's a microphone right on that side. You could use that.
Hi, can you hear me okay? Yeah, so I'm Mark Andel from the Department of Human Genetics. I also founded 2 companies over the years. So I think it's important to distinguish between, not to conflate large language models with AI. AI is a zoo. There are many, many different forms of AI. Most don't require massive computational resources or energy. And so if we conflate those 2 concepts together, large language models with AI, we burden potential entrepreneurial efforts with the problems associated with powering LLMs that simply don't apply to many AI startups and inventors. Thank you.
Did everyone hear that? I think he made a great point. So he was just talking about, particularly, I think, in the realm of, you know, having to have a lot of energy production to power these data centers, which are powering the LLMs. And he was saying there's a lot of different kinds of AI that can be developed, that is being used. It's not necessarily LLMs that don't necessarily require all that power. And by the way, I think one of the things that was interesting, probably you all noted this as well, when DeepSeek came out with their LLM, and it was done using a lot less power. So we know that there can be efficiencies gained, which is, I think, great news. Is that it? Manish?
I think one last question.
Yeah, thank you. And so I recently came out of a fintech exit and all that. So I am now launching a nonprofit for AI literacy. And so I'm wondering if there's any conversation or any initiatives to help underserved communities have equitable access to these AI resources, LLMs, and because I think there's a great potential to help underserved communities come out of that with that literacy. And so, but there's a number of challenges of the digital divide and things like that. And so the they were underserved communities were left behind in the computer era. And so how do we prevent that from happening again?
I love that comment, and I want to just underline it multiple times. It's something that I've been saying as well a lot, is that one of the problems when you have these new technologies come out is that you have a situation where, especially with artificial intelligence, how fast it's moving, the developments in it are so fast that, the population's understanding sort of stays like this. I can't really do it with my mic, and technology is going like this. So the gap, the asymmetry, if you will, in what the general public knows about it and what the experts know about it just grows increasingly large. And I think that puts us at risk. And so I think your point is extremely well taken. I know that some of those workforce development initiatives that we talked about are trying to touch on that. And I think we need to do far more. Absolutely. So I love that comment. Thank you. Well, I just will say thank you so much for having me. And, I've been thinking about this as I was driving in. Maybe you all were listening to the governor's press conference about what happened on Wednesday here in Utah, which is just, we could talk about for a long time how awful it is. We want to create a better society. We want to create a society that is tolerant of each other, that is interested in ideas from each other, and that is kind, frankly. We know that some of our technological, or I should say, tools that have been powered by certain technologies have only intensified the polarization. Once again, we can decide how we're going to build those tools. They don't have to be that way. We can choose different business models. And so I was just thinking about that. I was driving in, like, this is a moment in time that Utah can shine, that Utah can lead out with connected and pro-human AI. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you for your vision and your leadership.